Good afternoon. Today's session is titled From Reaction to Reflection, Communicating Through Affective Statements. This would be considered an advanced session. My name is Molly Peck, and I am a staff developer with Lincoln Intermediate Unit 12. My email is there if you'd like to connect at a later time, mcpeck@iu12.org. Our hopes today is that we are able to apply an affective statement to a past conflict scenario. All right, to start, what I'd like for us to do, since this is an advanced session and hopefully we do have some background knowledge on what affective statements are, I'd like us to respond to this multiple choice question. And so if you need to, you can pause the recording so that you can read through it. I will do that now. Which of the following is an example of an affective statement? Is it A, good job today, Sam? B, I feel upset when you push your work off your desk. What I'd like is for you to pick your work up and ask for a break when you feel frustrated. C, I can see you worked really hard on this project. Well done. Or D, I wish you would stop interrupting. That is disrespectful. Okay, hopefully you were able to pause the recording, come up with an answer. And I will go ahead and say that the answer that I was looking for would be item B. And right now, we won't go into depth as to why I say item B was the answer I was looking for. We're going to build on this and come back to this example in a few slides. So because this is a session where there should be some familiarity into this topic, I just want to do a brief review on affective statements. Now, affective statements simply are a communication strategy. They are meant to express how someone's behavior has impacted you, whether it be positive or negative. Now, when somebody hears this, the person learns how their behavior is affecting others. It has been found that many students are completely unaware of the impact, whether positive or negative, that their behavior has on others. Affective statements is just another way of saying expressing your feelings or sharing impact. Affective statements are considered the most informal, easiest, and useful type of response on the restorative practice continuum. So, what exactly is the restorative practice continuum? Affective statements are a cornerstone of restorative practices. And now, when we think of restorative practices embedded within schools, it is an alternative approach to classroom and school discipline that encourages students to form emotional bonds with adults and one another while minimizing negative interactions. Now, restorative practices can be used in any type of community. But because this is an advanced setting, I'm hoping there is some familiarity with the term restorative practices. Perhaps you are part of a school community that does use these approaches to school discipline. Now, affective statements draw on affect theory, which seeks to link actions to the emotions that drive them. So let's dive in a little bit deeper to the science of affect. To do that, I'd like us to pause the recording right now and think through this question. In what ways do humans naturally respond when approached with an accusatory tone of blame and anticipated punishment. Okay, because this is a recording, my hopes are that you had time to do that. So let's discuss. Because I can't hear your response, oftentimes our responses are most likely a wave of negative emotion, ranging from shame to humiliation, especially if this has been done in front of other people. It could be anger, frustration, defensiveness. And these innate negative affects can trigger an escalation of problematic behaviors. And we've probably seen this quite often, especially in the school setting when working with students. And this could look like shutting down, refusal to continue, wanting to escape the task, perhaps verbal or physical aggression. So when we as the speakers, the person who has been impacted by the behavior, we oftentimes use things such as you statements, YOU. And they often take on that accusatory tone and can unintentionally shut down the interaction before it has even begun. And so, what affective statements do is that they shift the language of the person who has been impacted in order to open up safe dialogue. So, why are affective statements so important and why do they work? As stated earlier, as humans, we are our response when approached with something accusatory or we feel like there is blame on us, oftentimes we respond with a negative affect or emotion. And affective statements is based on the science of affect, which was once or originally researched by psychologist Sylvan Tompkins. And in his work, what he was able to determine is that when emotions or affect are positive or neutral, we feel a sense of well being and satisfaction. However, when our emotions or our affects are negative, we respond with anger, distress, or shame. And so, what affective statements do is it helps to reduce those negative emotions and restore positive and neutral emotions. All right. When people hear affective statements, they learn how their behavior is affecting others. And we will learn as students and as people, when we hear from others, we will hear that you genuinely care about us and are truly excited when we do things well. But we will also, on the other hand, learn that when we fail to meet your expectations, it was more than just a norm or a rule that was violated. It was the relationship that was also violated. And so I'm just going to quick jump down to dot point number 3 is exactly what I was saying. Affective statements is a great place to start in helping to strengthen that teacher-student relationship, or really quite truthfully, any type of relationship. The other thing I want to point out is that affective statements really help to separate what we'll say the deed from the doer. And what I mean by that is we might have a student or a person who has done harm to our relationship. But when we can separate the person from the action, we help to eliminate that negative label that goes with, that's associated with the behavior. So, for example, Xavier is not a bad kid, but his behavior or his action of hitting others is. And that can help lessen Xavier's natural response of defensiveness, shame, humiliation. It almost acts as a new slate, a new place to start the next day for this person who has done, we'll say, an unfavorable action. And if used effectively, affective statements is a great place to begin fostering a positive classroom culture. It doesn't just have to be the adults who use them. We can also begin to use or have our students begin using them with one another and with us. Now, for those in this session, this should be some familiar information. And so some of us might be familiar with what I'll call I statements. Now, there is nothing wrong with I statements, but I have to say they are only the foundations of an affective statements. And so we need to build on them. And so oftentimes, I statements just include the following things. They include a feeling. So I feel angry. I feel disappointed. They include an observable behavior. But oftentimes, they are missing the next piece, which is the person who has been harmed sharing what they value and what they need. And oftentimes the I statements are also missing a plan for the future. And that's where affective statements come into play. So this slide is going to be very important. If anything, this is the one that I would be starring. This is the special equation we want to be using. So what I'd like us to do now is look at two examples. And these two examples take an I statement and take it one step further by adding the values and a plan for moving forward. So here we go. Okay, example 1. I feel disappointed when I hear classmates speak unkindly to each other because I'm concerned we don't remember how to treat others with respect. It's important to me that all students feel safe and valued in our classroom. What I need is for us to be mindful of our words. Can we agree to use respectful communication moving forward so everyone feels safe to learn? Now, what you will see in this example are the 5 items from the previous slide. I have included a feeling. I have also included an observable and non-blameful description of the behavior that I witnessed. I have then also included a tangible effect, so almost like the consequence of what I'm seeing. The additional piece, and probably the most important part, is the value. Okay, usually it is not enough to describe the other person's behavior and telling them that you're upset about it. They need to know why. All right, and that's where that value and need comes into play. People don't know what they don't know. So if they don't know that you value communication or inclusivity or respect towards one another, then they don't know to act in that way. And so it's so important that we include this in our affective statements. The last piece of this is the plan moving forward, the request. All right. What is it that I need you to do moving forward? Or what can we do together so that I can begin to see something favorable? This simple change by adding those last 2 pieces can be a step towards building a relationship because you are now talking with the person rather than at them. So here's another example. I feel frustrated when I am giving directions and people are talking because I'm concerned some people will not hear and I will have to explain it again to each person during independent work. It is important to me that we do not interrupt others while they are speaking. What I'd like is for everyone to listen with mouths closed until I am finished. Again, you can see the 5 pieces of the affective statement equation. And I'm going to be honest with you, it does not matter necessarily the order in which you include these things, but all pieces need to be included. I will also say that this can feel very uh, awkward as we begin to use this, especially if this is something new for us, or at least we're trying to refine our practice and get better about it. And so that's why it's awesome if we can just practice a few statements ahead of time or have something almost like a script that we can go off of. And that's why I think that equation is so important. If I could have that placed somewhere near my workspace so I know to include all the pieces and I haven't forgotten something. So let's do just a practice really quick, going back to the equation that was shared on a previous slide. So the statement below in which you see, you will realize that this comes from our inclusive opener. And yes, I said that was the correct answer, but I failed to include 2 pieces of it because I know we can do better. We can move from just that I statement and truly make it an affective statement. And so, what I'd like us to do, part 1, what parts of the affective statement equation are missing from the example below? So again, I feel upset when you push your work off your desk. What I'd like is for you to pick your work up and ask for a break when you feel frustrated. So I'm going to ask you to pause the recording and determine what parts from the equation are missing from this statement. Okay, hopefully you were able to determine what those pieces were. And because this is a recording, I'm going to go ahead and give those answers now. So, what I felt was missing would be the tangible effect. So, basically, the consequence of what I'm seeing, plus what I value or what I need statement is missing. All right, part 2. Now, what I would like for us to do is to change the example below, same example, to include all parts of the affective statement equation. So we know what's missing. We know what needs to be put into this statement. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. As I stated earlier, I want this to not be awkward, and it might be as you begin to use this practice. But I want you to use language that seems very authentic for you, as long as it's positively stated and we're not coming from that accusatory blame state. So find language that works for you, that's appropriate for you and the students or the people that you work with. So let's go ahead and pause the recording. And I want to give you time now to include the tangible effect and your need or request. Okay, so hopefully you had time to think through this example and include those missing pieces. Now, I am going to share with you my example since this is a recording. That's not to say yours is wrong in any way, but I'm sure ours will probably sound very similar. Okay, so we talked about that, but here we go. Here's the example I was able to come up with. I feel upset when you push your work off your desk because this can be distracting to others. I need you to know that when things are hard, we can work together to solve them. What I'd like is for you to pick your work up and ask for a break when you feel frustrated. So you can see my fingers are going up because I wanted you to see that I was identifying those five pieces from the affective statement equation. So, number one, the feeling. I feel upset. Number two, the observable, non-judgmental behavior that I witness, pushing the work off of your desk. All right. The tangible effect. What is the consequence of that action? Well, it can be distracting to others. All right. And if others are distracted, now we're having more disruption in the classroom and negative affect. All right. The last two pieces. What do I need or what do I value? I need you to know that when things are hard, we can work together as a team here. So there's four. And then lastly, what is our plan moving forward or the request? All right. The request is I'd like you to pick up your work. And then the plan is asking for a break when you feel frustrated. Now, I will say, knowing the students or the people you work with, if you feel that they are able to help you think through the plan, then absolutely engage them in this process. Because the idea here is that we want to limit this from happening again in the future, limiting that negative affect. So, what can I do to help support you? Let's think about this together. And as you heard me say earlier, this is where we're talking with the individual versus at the individual. And there's going to be more believe in if we can do it together. Now, you know your students and your colleagues and the people you work with best. You might not be in a place to do that, and you might have to come up with that plan yourself and then share it with that individual. But just something to consider to give them more ownership. Okay, so some other considerations before we move into independent practice. So, we want to strategically think through when we are delivering these affective statements, where we're delivering these affective statements, and what manner that we're delivering them in so that we can maximize the impact. All right. If you are delivering an affective statement while a student or another individual is already escalated and already in a um, state of negative affect, then what we want to do is place, especially if we are delivering an affective statement that is for unfavorable behavior or an unfavorable action. If we are able, we want to make sure that we're delivering that in private. And if you feel that it is best that we let everyone calm down who was impacted by this action or behavior, then it might be appropriate to think through what you want to say and that equation and deliver it the next time you see that individual. What we don't want to happen is we just excuse or ignore it and just sweep it under the rug and never return to it. Because the idea here is that we are sharing how that action made us feel so that we can limit it from happening in the future. We also want to consider our tone, right? So you've heard me say that non-accusatory tone. We do not want to place blame or put somebody in that shame factor or affect. As you heard me state earlier, this might be something that you want to teach your students how to use so that they can resolve small conflicts with peers or teachers. Quite frankly, these are conversational skills that we want all of our students to be able to use as they begin to move forward in life and eventually out on their own. Item number three, you can post sentence frames near your work area or around the room, especially if this is something you want to begin to integrate in your work, or if you feel like, hey, I need something that fits me and my personality. And I'm afraid if I don't have this script, I might go immediately into a negative affect. So no shame in that, having those sentence frames around the room or near your area. And then lastly, this is something I kind of touched on, but thinking about the students and the people that you work with, we might need some accommodations, whether that is a sentence frame or a sentence starter. We might need visuals, especially with our younger individuals if we begin to use it with them. So thinking through what that could look like for our students. Okay. This slide is just including some resources for you that you can begin to use if you'd like to do further exploration in this practice of affective statements. All right, and then lastly, I want to give you an opportunity to practice using the affective statement equation with a situation that you've been a part of. Now, the statement says, think of a time when the behavior of a student, a colleague, a family member had a negative impact on you and your response was not restorative. Create an affective statement that you could readily use if this were to happen again. So I'm going to ask you to pause the recording now. Think about a past scenario from this past summer, the past school year, or maybe it just occurred, a few days ago, and your response was immediately that accusatory or that shame or blame game. All right. And that's okay if it was. But if you were put in the situation again and you had time to prepare something or something to act on, what would you say differently? So pause the recording, take some time to think through a scenario, use the equation, and write out an affective statement. All right. Again, this is a recording, so I'm not going to be able to hear from my audience. So I went ahead and did the same thing that I asked of you, and here's what I came up with. Now, this example is based on a scenario of working with some team members. I'm disappointed when we don't all show up for a planning session. I find it hard to get everyone on the same page when this happens. One of our team values is communication. Can we agree to decline calendar invites as a signal that we won't be present for planning meetings moving forward? So this is very unique to my context, but I could see this being very valuable if I were to deliver this to my team members. So number one, I've stated my feeling. I'm disappointed. All right. The second piece is the behavior. We don't all show up for a planning session. People are absent. The tangible effect. All right. It's hard when people are absent. Then I have to get everyone on the same page when this happens. Our values. This is something we came up together as a team. We value communication. And then, so what is our plan moving forward going to be? As a group, can we agree that we are going to decline calendar invites? And that is going to be the signal that say, hey, I will not be able to be present for this meeting moving forward. And that lets us know that that person will not be there. So again, just a simple example that you can see all 5 pieces of that affective statement equation is present. All right. And as we end for today, I want to leave you with this question. So if you want to pause the recording to think through this, I encourage it. What next step will you take to begin using affective statements in your everyday work? Thank you for your time and watching this recording. My hopes are that you are able to begin using affective statements sooner rather than later as a way to repair relationships. Thank you so much.